This video is brought to you by willnichollscoaching.
This summer I sailed away from my first forward loop, so I thought I'd take you through how I got there and some of the things that really helped me to progress and land my first one. So I started with a commitment. I knew if I actually wanted to land my first forward loop, I was going to have to spend time really focusing on it. To start with, I didn't worry too much about technique. I had a rough idea on the technique and the theory, which was important, but my main focus was committing to learning, practicing, and getting over the fear of pulling the trigger. Immediately, the first problem I had was letting go of the boom and coming out of the straps. This was probably because in this session, I was overpowered and didn't really have enough confidence. It was an almost involuntary knee-jerk reaction just to let go and bail. I had this crush quite a lot where I jumped a little bit and then just bailed halfway through, which ended up with some pretty nasty back slaps. So I had 3 problems that I had to solve. 1, hold on to the boom. 2, stay in the straps. And 3, build confidence to send it. Send it! To make sure that I held onto the boom, I adjusted my grip, placing my thumb underneath the boom instead of having it in the normal position on top. This helped me get a tighter grip, making it harder to instinctively let go. To make sure I stayed in the straps, I just focused on doing a more aggressive pop and making sure I had my feet firmly in the straps before taking off. And finally, to build more confidence, I started using an impact vest and had some mates on the beach shouting at me to go for it. So I went back out and I tried again. I really focused on popping the board out of the water and trying my best to hold onto the boom no matter what. It worked pretty well, and I ended up getting halfway around, still landing on my back, but now I was actually holding onto the boom, which was a huge step forward for me. A few days passed and I had enough footage to look through and analyze. I found watching the footage back really helped me identify where I was making my mistakes. Getting someone to film you, even if it's just with a phone, can show you a lot. Whilst watching the footage, it made me realize how similar these attempts were to my grubby attempts, which both kind of look more like cheese rolls than anything else. If you can already do the grubby, then you can just tweak it slightly to get closer to the forward by doing a more exaggerated movement where you pull the sail in harder with your backhand, keep your back leg tucked instead of extending it out, and try to look over your shoulder as well. It's not the best technique for the forward, but doing it this way was a good way for me to build the muscle memory of getting around the first part of the loop. And that's what I think the first part of the loop is all about, is getting over the fear of trying and pulling the trigger. Okay, so now that I'd built some confidence and I was getting around the first part, it was time to work on getting further around the loop. I needed to somehow get more rotation. So my next strategy was the following. I would bear off downwind onto a broad reach to gain max speed, jump and just throw my body forward, making sure to hold onto the boom, pull in with the backhand and try to look over my shoulder. The reason why I was going so far downwind at this stage was for 2 reasons. The first was to get maximum speed, which made it easier for me to pop the board out of the water. It also reduced the power in the sail, making it easier to hold onto the boom and throw my body into the loop. The more speed I had, the more momentum I built. So when I jumped and just threw myself forward, as long as I got the board out of the water, I could just rely on the momentum to carry me around the first part of the loop. The second point is that the further downwind I would take off from, the further around the rotation I already was before even jumping. If you've ever seen the Waimaru, it's the same kind of idea. So I felt like all I had to do was to rotate 180 from this downwind position and I could get further around the loop. It worked and I managed to get even further around than I had before while still holding onto the boom and staying in the straps. Eventually I started to get far enough around that I was pretty much ending up in a water start position. This was a huge moment for me because now I knew that I wasn't that far away. So now I had to figure out a way to get a faster rotation and get round the last part of the loop and hopefully water start away from one. The problem I had now was not getting enough rotation from the sail. Almost all of my rotation came from my momentum, but it was clear that I needed to generate more of my rotation from the power in the sail. At this point, I also posted a clip on my Instagram to see what advice people had. A lot of people talked about the movement of the sail and how it needs to go forwards and across my body, as well as to position my hands further back. It was also very apparent that I was too far downwind, and because of this, I didn't have enough power actually in the sail. As I mentioned before, by going downwind, I was reducing the power in the sail, which meant that it was better for building the confidence for the first attempts, but it's worse for technique and getting the whip from the sail, giving you a faster rotation. So it was at this point that I started to try in stronger winds and also tried to head a little bit further upwind, as well as focusing on the sail movement going across my body and then forward. It did make it a little bit scarier, but I knew that I could rely on the muscle memory of pulling the trigger and holding on from the previous sessions. The tips I was given really helped, and eventually I got this attempt, which to me really felt like a forward loop, because I could really feel the power in the sail whipping me round, and I began to get an idea of how the forward should actually feel. I now understand why everyone talks about how good the forward loop feels, and after more practice, I eventually got far enough round that I managed to water start out of my first forward loop. It was such an incredible feeling and felt so good to get this far. I've still got more to learn, and now I'm working towards landing them properly, but I think the foundations are certainly there. And the biggest breakthrough for me was getting over the fear. Let me know in the comments if you're trying the loop and how it's going so far. Or if you can already do the loop, then just write your most useful tip in the comments for everyone else to see. If you like the content that I'm making, you can now support the channel by heading to my website. All the contributions will go towards increasing the quality of the content on my channel. You can also check out everything that I'm offering, including coaching, media services, spot guides, and more. Big thanks to everyone who supports the channel. I really appreciate it.